Okay, so supposedly we are being live streamed, and we're also going to record on Zoom. And I'm going to start sharing my screen, ladies. Thanks for coming today. What we're going to be talking about is Lyme's disease. So I wanted to start with Eileen because she has an amazing testimony, or something that she'd like to share with us about Lyme's disease. And if everybody else would please mute, and then I'm going to go ahead and start a presentation. So Eileen, go ahead.
Well, first of all, I'd like to just comment that what I'm going to say is my personal experience, and it may not be valuable or helpful for anybody else. So what I did may not be something that you want to do. So basically, 2006, I was diagnosed with Lyme disease. My titer was so high, they figured I'd had it for 15 years or so. So I kind of figured out where I got the tick bite. But at any rate, started on antibiotics, changed antibiotics every 3 months. After 2 years, I went on IV antibiotics for a year, changing antibiotic every 3 months, very strong antibiotics. And after that year, I went back on oral antibiotics. And I was on that for a total of 7 years, a little over 7 years. And then due to something else that happened, I had a spinal tap to rule out meningitis. And basically the doctor said that the only thing they proved with the spinal tap was that I still had Lyme disease and cerebrospinal fluid after 7 years of antibiotics. And that's why most doctors will tell you you're going to be on and off antibiotics your entire life, as the bugs, hide in your cerebrospinal fluid when you're on antibiotics. And then when you go off antibiotics, when you feel better, it comes back out and starts replicating. You feel bad again. So that's basically the cycle of Lyme disease. So what I had a couple reactions to antibiotics. So I basically went off of antibiotics for my doctor said that until my blood work came back to normal. And then they said I could go back on antibiotics. I did not. I started TKM and Rife treatment. And I don't know if any of you know what rifing is, but a Rife treatment is basically the same as the WAVwatch. The WAVwatch produces the frequency digitally, and the Rife bulb, it's a plasma bulb that creates the frequencies when you have a Rife treatment. And basically what it does is it targets the specific bacteria or virus or fungus or whatever you have and kills it. So I am today Lyme disease free. And most doctors will. Sorry, I muted myself by accident. So anyway, yeah, I had a combination of TKM, which is energy work, and Rife treatments. And then when Linda's watch came out, of course, I bought the watch so I could treat myself continually, because I've had tick bites and I just don't even worry about it. I just turn on the Lyme disease and let it run through the whole program a couple times a week. And I am still Lyme disease free and have been for several years. So that's my experience. I can only tell you from my experience what not to do and what to do. And I have recommended several of my friends who were diagnosed with Lyme disease to go get TKM and Rife, and they are 100% cured. So it's not just me, it's other people too.
Perfect. So we wanted to share that when we got started because she said she couldn't be on a little bit later. So I'm going to go ahead and try to give you some more information. I'm not sure how many of you know about Lyme's disease or in depth. I'm hoping everybody see my screen that says Lyme disease.
Yes.
Okay. Right. So that's where we want to be, is looking at some information about Lyme disease. And if you've been on one of these webinars before, you know that I'm going to kind of shoot as fast as I can. I don't want to waste your time. I want to give you some information. And so the the screens have some written information, and then I'm going to be saying, a few things or adding to what the screen says. But don't forget that we are talking about the WAVwatch, and I have to, let you know or remind you that it uses low risk acoustical sound frequencies that we can hear. And they're not high frequency and they're not low frequency. They are sound acoustical frequencies. And we do refer to names of diseases, but that's only so that we can identify which one to use. It's not a medical diagnosis whatsoever. And of course, it's not intended to diagnose or to quote unquote treat. It's to, balance your system, but we are using some specific words. So that's our disclaimer. And then you've all seen the WAVwatch, or hopefully you have, And so I am currently, I have 850 self-care ideas. And the whole concept is that we are absorbing the vibrations through the speaker on the back of the watch, basically. And it will cause one cell to vibrate on your skin, and then the next one vibrates, and the next, and then it just zips through your body at 4.3 times the speed of sound. Now, don't forget, your skin is one of the biggest organs, or the biggest organ system to absorb vibrations. And now they're saying our bones absorb vibrations also and work with sound in many, many different ways. So our whole body is reflecting on sound, acoustical sound. So we are on WAVwatch with the Frequency Fanatics. And so if I click all the right buttons and say all the right things, everything will come up on WAVwatch Frequency Fanatics after this, and you can watch it live or, share that with somebody else. Now, basically get started. Some people, I think, are really appreciating the playlists and kind of going off on their own tangent, and that's great. But I do want to let you know that I've made a considerable effort to make playlists for you. And that's because we don't know everything. It's so hard to go through 850 frequencies and say, oh, this one might work for such and such. Oh, this one's for this one, and this one's for this one. So a perfect example is the Lyme disease. So on the next screen, I want to show you the playlist I've already made you. So most people would not know that all of these ideas have to do with Lyme disease. They might know they're a virus, or they might know they're a parasite or something, but all of these are definitely connected with Lyme's disease, and they're adding more as we speak. So Lyme's disease is considered a disease with co-infections. And that kind of leads to the story that Eileen was telling, that she was on antibiotics, and we're going to be talking about that in just a few slides. But so I've made a playlist for you. So if you're worried about Lyme disease, if you know somebody with Lyme disease, you can just select the icon that says Lyme, touch that icon, and then just play through every single idea. Now, you should not just pick one necessarily. You should play through all of them, because our bodies bounce around and things change. And I'll try to show you why just a little bit. So feel free, though, to start with one and play it all night long, but make sure that you, at some certain point during the day, that you play all of them. If you're going to isolate one, great, but also play all of them during the day. How many of you, I guess maybe we'll kind of ask that later, but I work with a lot of people with Lyme disease. I have for about 15 or 16 years. And most people don't realize about all the different types of infections that are included or considered co-infections. So I think this is an interesting concept. So it's a conglomeration. It's Borrelia burgdorferi, and that's a spiral-shaped bacteria, and that's related to syphilis, And just a little clue right here, spiral-shaped bacteria do not react to antibiotics. Isn't that interesting with what Eileen just said? Okay. Other bacteria may, but spiral-shaped bacteria do not react to antibiotics very well. Then we have parasites, and we have viruses, and just different ones that are all connected with our Lyme co-infections. And then recently they've started getting worried about different yeasts and molds. And again, like I mentioned, the medical community works with antibiotics. That was just backed up in testimony. And she had quite a few years of antibiotics. What I have heard, the normal is 2 years of antibiotics treating only bacteria. Does anyone think that an antibiotic would kill a parasite or a virus? I'm not sure, not that I know of, So they're kind of targeting only one area. So if you have been diagnosed with Lyme's, or you've had a big bullseye rash or something and you think you have Lyme's, you want to do a lot of research and, check out the medical, check out the alternative, learn and educate yourself. So research, research, research. Medical testing is looking for antibodies to the bacteria to confirm that you have Lyme's disease. And it's pretty sorry to say that's a little bit false, because our body doesn't even make antibodies. We do not register that these pathogens have gotten into our system. They're stealth pathogens, and they hide with a protein-like coating. And so they're in your body sometimes for decades, and you don't even know it. But the medical community thinks that within just a couple of weeks that your body is going to make antibodies. So they do not recognize with any kind of a test. And so many people have not been diagnosed with Lyme's disease because the body is not reacting to it. And that's normal. That's not abnormal. That's a normal response for your body. But the testing from the medical community is not really picking up on this. So I kind of put that if you need a little bit more information. These are stealth pathogens. All of those ideas that I just put up before about Lyme disease, they're considered stealth pathogens. So your body doesn't fight them. So here's another name, okay? Just a little bit of information here. I got this from Lyme Warrior, but you could be bit by a tick, and early symptoms can show up from 22 to 30 days or even years, again, after the tick bite. So quite a spread of symptoms showing up. Now, the medical community thinks that if they can catch it early enough, that they can give you antibiotics the first 30 days. And there may be something to that. I have had several clients that say they thought that did stop it in their tracks. But many of us have no idea the first 30 days, So many other times the harsh treatment of antibiotics in a 30-day cycle does not seem to work. Well, there's a lot of variations. So, 2 to 30 days after a bite, these are some things that can occur. And there is a rash. A lot of people are looking only for that rash and saying, well, how could I have Lyme's disease if I haven't had that rash? It does not happen. You don't always have that. And then sometimes that rash will extend into an area on the body that does not, it looks just like a sore spot. It's not a bullseye rash. And so it doesn't happen. And we're seeing that less and less with tick bites or with Lyme's disease. And I'll explain why in just a minute. So even days or months after a tick bite, we could have all of these things. So we could have headaches, neck stiffness, additional rashes. Your face could start to droop. You could have lots of arthritis, lots of intermittent pain, heart palpitations, dizziness, shortness of breath, inflammation in our brain and spinal cord, nerve pain, shooting pains, numbness or tingling in the feet. And I know you all can read, but it's just makes us need to really settle in so that we kind of go over some of these symptoms, because 90% of the population could have Lyme's disease. And I've got that in a slide. I've probably jumped, but there are lots of co-infections too. So you can see charts all over. And there were some co-infections that I don't believe I found a frequency for, but many, many co-infections exist. So there's just one chart of those, and you can find those in many places. So you wouldn't just have to be out in the woods. But here's what's happening and what's going on, and a scary possibility. There's a theory that Lyme disease, was first isolated in Lyme, Connecticut in about 1975. And they found a large number of children who had arthritis, juvenile rheumatoid arthritis in Lyme, Connecticut. And of course, they discovered that these children played in the woods, and they got it more in the summer during tick season, and they had rashes. So they just wrote it off to Lyme's disease. I don't know how many of you know this, but they forgot to tell us that Lyme, Connecticut was right next door to a government germ laboratory. And it's called Plum Island. And so if you read this line, there's lots of virus outbreaks, biological meltdowns, infected workers, periodic flushing of contaminated sewage into the area and the waters of Plum Island, Lyme disease, and the West Nile virus. So guess who has control of that island? The Department of Homeland Security. So they forgot to tell us that. So what happened is they put together the first idea that children were getting rheumatoid arthritis. So they sent, workers to Lyme, Connecticut. And it took them 7 years to isolate this particular strain. And they named it after the lead investigator. And his name was, Willie Burgdorferi. So it's now called Borrelia burgdorferi. But it is a Lyme connection that has been around for hundreds of years. So why all of a sudden did it go crazy and start being so obvious that people in neighboring towns, the children especially, were having this problem? So that's one idea. That's theory two. Now, just to back that up, there's another book, and this is called Bitten: The Secret History of Lyme Disease and Biological Weapons. So Plum Island is just 20 miles from Connecticut, and we talked about how things travel. So that was in 1975. So at this point in time, whatever caused that tick population to change and to be so much more deadly, because literally they have found Borrelia, if you would like to call it Lyme's disease, in, ancient cavemen. I think I saw one that was 4,000 or 6,000 years old, whatever, but ancient people have also been noted and found with Lyme disease. But at this stage, it's so outrageous, and I'm going to keep showing you how outrageous it is, but huge connections, in my opinion. So I have actually believed and worked with this idea for since 2004, I think, when I started working with this. So there is a possibility that something went awry with Plum Island. Several books written on that. It may not. And see, here's just, maybe it's just a bad theory, because they knew about Lyme disease as far back as the 1880s. And then again, I mentioned that they found it in cavemen. So what happened? Again, why is there such an uptick, if I can use that phrase? Why is there such an uptick on tick problems? So something happened. So at this particular stage, there are 365 medical conditions linked to Lyme disease. Doesn't that just kind of blow you away? So I tried to put the link there, And you could probably find it very easily if you just type in 365 medical conditions for Lyme disease, or, do some research on your own, but the link is here. And I started to try to list some of those, but it was just not working very well. I'll show you my first attempt at one page of listing conditions. So look at this. This is just, the start. There's 365 medical conditions connected to Lyme disease. I think I'll let that soak in a minute and let you kind of see that. Yes. Somebody have a comment? That's just one page. That's just one idea of 365 noted conditions connected with Lyme's disease. So that's why I made a complete icon for just Lyme's disease. It's huge. It's something that we all need to be doing to just protect ourselves. Literally, you can get on an airplane, and when you get off, you could have Lyme's disease. Now, they're all frantic if we get on an airline and somebody has tuberculosis, or what today from the, the spot on our arms. If you, previous to that condition, if somebody, quote unquote, was known to have tuberculosis, that was a no-no on an airplane because you'd get off with it. But they forgot to tell us that because all this air is recycled on our airplane, although I've had stewardess tell me that it's cleaned and cleaned and cleaned and there's no possible way that it could get through. Well, again, these are minute articles or particles. And so they can get through. Literally, we're all in danger when somebody gets on an airplane that inadvertently might have Lyme disease. We could all get off with it if our immune systems can get fought off. I can't provide the rest of the list, but I gave you the link. Somebody asked me if I could give you the whole link. I gave you the link that has us 365. It was just so much to it. There's, like I said, this is just one page of it. So it is an amazing problem that we have in our society today. So I'm kind of on a rant, if you can tell, but I'll show you the next slide. I think I will. Okay. Another researcher, and this was probably 15 years ago when I wrote this article, Joan Whitaker, an MD and Lyme researcher who had Lyme's disease. At that point, she said there were 300 diseases. And it explains why so many chronic illness sufferers have rashes, heart trouble, heart failure, rhythm problems, scleroderma, IBS, sudden deafness, eye inflammation, hyperactivity, chronic pain, and many, many more. Huge. So I have worked with a couple of medical doctors who did appreciate my biomeridian screening because they realized that the tests that they were using were not able to pinpoint Lyme disease. And in 1 week, for some reason, 3 ladies came that had all had, quote unquote, problems with their brain, and they tried to call it a stroke, and they did all the testing they could. Their first diagnosis was a stroke, and then they did not know what had happened. So after thousands of dollars, they said, yeah, don't know what it is. So those doctors did send those 3 ladies to me in 1 week. It just happened in 1 week, so that's why it stays in my mind so much. And all of those ladies actually did seem to have the co-infections of Lyme disease. They had every single idea that I was able to test for in their system. So I thought that was pretty interesting. So there's another huge problem. Our brain is extremely sensitive to Lyme disease. So I think I've got this in here twice, or maybe I, kind of cut and pasted another idea for you. But here's more problems with Lyme's disease. So on the right-hand column, you'll see that Dr. Paul Fink, past president of the American Psychiatric Association, says that it can be attributed to every psychiatric problem there is. So again, it messes with our brains, our emotions, our health, everything you can think of can be affected by Lyme's disease. Now, this is what got me upset. We're not educated about this. Many of you that I have seen in person do know about Lyme disease. And probably you know somebody by this point in time who's been diagnosed with Lyme disease. But I think the biggest tip that we do not know about Lyme disease is that it spreads so easily. And I already kind of mentioned on airplanes. So by the same token, whole families are getting Lyme disease. And they all have a different symptom because there's at least 365 symptoms now, or medical diseases that they could have. And nobody ever connects the dots. So the Lyme disease, the live spirochete, they're in mosquitoes. So now we can be outside and we can be bit by a mosquito and it's Lyme disease. So of course we're not going to get that particular rash that Lyme disease earlier was known for. I have had 2 little boys that were brought in and they were bit by mosquitoes, and they had just kind of a curved area on their back where every lymph node was kind of lit up and swollen up. And it was just like a nice half, egg size. I don't want to say, it wasn't that big. I'm not trying to say that, but the shape on the middle of their back was kind of curved. Not a very good explanation there, but probably about 15 lymph nodes were scattered across their back that were swollen up and red. And they had been out in some mosquitoes. And my screening system was pointing to Lyme's disease. So yes, we probably have husbands. We probably have husbands and wives passing Lyme's disease back and forth. And somebody might not be muted. If you wouldn't mind trying to mute yourself. Sometimes I can see, but a lot of times I can't see. And so if you'll go ahead and mute yourself. So sorry, but you can even be at the bathroom in some filling station, old word, and actually pick up something having to do with Lyme disease. It's very, very transmissible. It's contagious is another word to say it. And they are not telling us. They're not even giving us an idea. It's not even on the radar. So again, look at the title of her book, Cell Wall Deficient Form, Stealth Pathogens. So again, these particular co-infections seem to all have that ability in common. Your body doesn't recognize them, so it doesn't fight it off. So it gets into your body and it just eats away. Lyme disease, quote unquote, loves soft body tissues. Other ideas. Years can pass before symptoms appear. We just don't know. Everyone is different. Now, we've got lots and lots more health problems now, and we all know our lives have changed. But look at this. One possible trigger for Lyme could be stress. You think anybody's stressed in our world today? So a lot of us could have been carrying Lyme disease for a while, and then we add on the hot spot on our arms, we add the stress, we add who knows what. And so our health care is getting outrageous. There's more and more problems. People don't know what to do. And I guess I'm trying to tell you with this particular presentation that Lyme's is a huge possibility that we need to be protecting ourselves from. We can't get away from it. It is being passed from person to person very easily. I know some of you read ahead. So how many of you recognize that aspartame triggers it? So they put aspartame into, or equal, or, sweetener. They put that into our food chain. And gosh, wasn't that back in Reagan's time? I guess I should have refreshed my memory on that a little bit, but that was passed, even though there was a lot of fighting about it, but it still passed, and aspartame was allowed in our food chains. The last quote I had said 7,000 foods. That may change. There may be in 9,000 foods now. But anyway, aspartame or equal can be in almost anything. And if it's in a small enough amount, they don't even have to tell you. So there are a lot of foods that aspartame is in without them being truthful about it. One example, I had a gentleman that my computer kept thinking that he had aspartame in his system. And he said, no, I never eat anything. I read labels. And this was probably 15 years ago. I remember some examples, or maybe 14, but he went home and, 2 or 3 sessions, it just kept worrying, the computer system kept worrying about aspartame. And finally he came back and he was so disgruntled, and he goes, I found it. It was in my natural bran cereal. I've been eating it for years. He had never looked. It was a natural brand cereal from a good label, something that you would have thought would have been safe, but it had aspartame in it. So who knows what we have done to set ourselves up for Lyme disease being able to exist in our body because we've triggered it. And, all of us have eaten something at one time or another that probably has some aspartame in it. Well, I don't know how many of you have eaten beef before. How many of you have had chicken? So here we go again. Our animals can be infected with Borrelia and transmitted by food. And then the last thing is that Borrelia burgdorferi can possibly, they said, can't even, believes that it could survive, purification process in donated blood, in blood transfusions. So lots of things going on here with blood transfusions. So if anybody believes, that they might be in some, I'm not exactly sure how to phrase this, but if I was sick, I would want my own blood. That's the way to say it. So several people have taken the time to go in and have their blood drawn and saved for them just in case of an emergency. So this is another reason why, who knows? But that is an idea that several people have. So, and that kind of backs that up, that many things are passing through our blood, donated blood. Now, this is an old statistic, and I'm sorry, I had this in something I'd written, and I didn't look it up, but they believe that 20 million Americans, or 1 in 15 people, could be infected with Lyme's disease at this point in time. So 90% of the population could be carrying Lyme's disease. And Dr. Lee Cowden is a pretty great example of, named in the news quite a bit at one point in time about Lyme disease. And he says there are very few symptoms where one should not consider Lyme disease. So it is huge. So 90%, 95%, whatever number, there's, maybe some opposite things that we are not able to take our statistics correctly. And I think all of you know what I'm talking about. So, this was a statistic a long time ago. So that's probably gotten a lot worse, in my opinion, if it has been recorded correctly. So just in closing, I'm about to open this up because I have not covered, I probably need to do 2 or 3 presentations on Lyme's disease. I did not talk about each of these individually and give you some symptoms from each of those individual problems. I just want you to know that we've got quite a bit covered. And then Eileen was gracious enough to, recommend a couple of different things that she had done. We're doing antibiotics, or excuse me, she did 7, is that right? 7 years, you might have to correct me, 7 years of antibiotics. And the normal, at least 2 years of antibiotics. But it's plain as day to me that if antibiotics don't work on parasites and spiral shaped bacteria and viruses, that's a pretty inconclusive way to treat Lyme disease. So again, you've got to do quite a bit of research. And one way to start off would be with the WAVwatch. And then rife frequencies were also mentioned, and that's what the WAVwatch is. A little bit different, but that same type of an idea. Now, I have one more idea for you. I may have to jump a couple ideas. Don't forget that there are other ideas that you could do for Lyme disease. Oh, I see, I didn't spell it right. But anyway, detox. You want to detox the whole do the whole folder, the whole icon. You want to do all the icons and germs. You want to do all the icons on emotions. Lymph nodes are a big one. Lyme hides them. Also, same way with dental. Lyme hides in your teeth. And I think we've already talked about how every tooth has 2.5 to 3 miles of roots, and that's where different pathogens can settle in. And what I did forget to put on here was our organ system. So we should play through a lot of organ systems if we're a person that's really got some problems going on. You're going to know if it's your liver, you're going to know if it's your pancreas, but play those particular organ systems or play all of them, because Lyme can invade any of them. Any soft tissue, Lyme disease hides.
Can I make a comment, Linda?
Yes.
Okay, I wanted to make a couple comments. It is incredibly important to detox because when you're killing off the bacteria or the viruses, or I had 6 co-infections, and one of them was a parasite. And when you're killing those off, you can get tremendous herpes reactions where you just feel horrible. And if you detox, that will mitigate that. You won't have as much of a reaction to the neurotoxins that are released when you kill off the organism. And then also, definitely run the liver and the kidneys organs, because that's how you detox. So not only do you run the detox, but you run the organs that the detox goes through. So that's one comment. The other comment on blood transfusion, one of my co-infections was mycoplasma, and mycoplasma lives inside red blood cells, and you don't really get a good feel. Like, I still have 2 to 3% of my red blood cells infected with mycoplasma, but we're keeping it under control. And when you do a blood transfusion, they don't know what's inside your red blood cells. So anybody who has Lyme should probably never, ever give blood, ever, even if you're cured. Like, I will never give blood. So that's important.
So it goes both ways. You don't know what to do about your blood. You don't know if you want blood from somebody else, and you're not sure that you should be safe enough to give it to somebody else. So
right,
it's a huge problem. Mm-hmm.
Very good. The third thing I want to comment is food is medicine. If you use it correctly and you buy clean food, organic if you can afford it, and if you eat processed food, it's going to have something in it that's going to trigger Lyme. So just be really careful. I mean, I'm on a detox diet right now that all it is grass-fed beef, free-range chicken or turkey, and organic vegetables and fruit. I mean, you have to remember that food is medicine, and it will help you detox. So I'm done preaching.
Hey, that is so great. And I just have one last slide, and then we're going to open it up to everybody. But I wanted to make sure that you heard from Eileen, and I'm so glad you were on the call today, Eileen. Didn't even know you would be. It was perfect timing.
Thank you.
So the last thing I wanted to share is that in my office, I was trying to figure out something for people to do where they could start working on their body before they had to rush and make any decisions. Because I did learn that if I sent somebody to a medical doctor, a lot of times they immediately settled into the antibiotics, even though I had heavily suggested no. The medical doctors had, very heavily suggested yes. So I just wanted to come up with something that people could start doing. To me, that would be fairly easy, and that could be a long-term idea for keeping things at bay in your system. And so I call it a reload protocol. And basically, I did find that large doses of salt, the unrefined sea salt, and we've talked about this several times, but unrefined sea salt and larger doses of vitamin C can be very helpful, and in fact may be able to take the place of 2 years of antibiotics. So what do you want to do? Vitamin C and salt or antibiotics for 2 years? So there was, I haven't found this on the website lately. So I was glad that I found this about 15 years ago. So I've added to it a little bit over the years, but I've been saying every time I talk, take lots of salt. But on this protocol, I'm also suggesting heavier doses of vitamin C and vitamin B. Now, I had a brand name in here. Cataplex is a standard process, but whatever you do, get whole food, vitamin C and vitamin D, get the best that you can. Don't get ascorbic acid at the grocery store, anything like that. We're talking about a problem, Lyme disease, that can cause immeasurable damage. So you're going to have to spend some money. But this is an easy thing to do. I take my salt at night. I take vitamin C in the morning. If sometimes I forget it, but that's what I do. And then I've added iodine. We are very deficient in iodine. I know I've mentioned it, but I have complete PowerPoints on how iodine is my favorite supplement this season when we have such warm arms, and we can reload with iodine. You can start taking it slowly, and you can take it internally. You can put it on topically, but just get a lot more iodine in your system. I also suggest lots of bone broth. You'd be creative with that, and then do some detoxing 2 to 3 times a week with a hot bath and sea salt. And so those are a few more ideas, but I specifically try to impress this on people that this is something they could start with while they're doing their research. And again, my tie-in is that I found some information that high doses of salt and vitamin C could effectively be substituted for antibiotics. Now I have to say that, maybe I hope I've said that correctly. I'm not saying don't take antibiotics if your doctor doesn't tell you to, but if you are leery and you're looking for some other out of the box ideas, this is a great idea. And I have personally used this myself for many years. And it's just not helpful for Lyme's disease. It's helpful. That's my go-to. This is what I say I do to keep myself healthy for so many things. So anyway, I call it the reload protocol. And you're just dosing up on lots more minerals, 60 to 80 minerals in that salt. You're getting a heavier dose of vitamin C and a larger dose of B vitamins to protect your brain. And then the iodine is something that kills all day long. It's going to kill things. It's a huge destroyer. And so anyway, bone broth, add some more minerals, and sea salts in a hot bath for a detoxification. Okay, so I think that's kind of where I'm at with ending this idea. And I'd love to have you make some comments. I'll see if I can kind of change over here so that we can see everybody. But any comments on Lyme disease?
Linda, I've got something I'd like to share.
Sure.
It's Vienna. And I did, when my some family members got Lyme disease 15 or 20 years ago, I did some research at that point. I don't think we had met yet, and found a vitamin C and sea salt protocol. And I love the explanation. And I know some people are visual, the visual helps them. What's going on? Why do those two work well together? And the idea was the salt, C does all kinds of amazing things. But the importance of the salt is that it increases the osmotic pressure and pushes the C into the cells. And so I just thought that was helpful. And also visualization is a really cool tool. Some people teach kids to picture the little soldiers going out in your body, the white blood cells, and fighting. So if you could picture as you take your salt, that osmotic pressure, pushing all the good stuff into your cells to take down the ones that were stealthy. Thank you.
Perfect. All right. And I started to mention, is it okay if I talk about your dad? Vienna's dad is a veterinarian, and she had mentioned that he did a study with some of his veterinarian students, and they tested all the animals on his 40 acres. Am I saying that right, Vienna? And every single one of them was carrying Lyme disease.
And actually, it was a little more interesting than that. It was a study that K-State was doing. So Dad wasn't teaching, but he knew the instructors that were doing the study, and they came to the property in Wyandotte County, and they didn't have very many animals on the farm except mice. And so they set live traps and anesthetized the mice to check them over, like the ones that they caught. And then they noticed on the paper towel all these seed ticks, like too tiny to find, really, dropped off because they had been anesthetized too. And those were positive for Lyme. So crazy.
So,
and but here's what else was interesting. When I go out on walks, I try to stay away from areas with deer tracks, because one of the things that their study published, as I understand it, is that in order for a tick to pass Lyme disease, there was something about a mouse meal and a deer meal, I think, so there, anyway, it was fascinating stuff, and that doesn't count for the mosquito population, but it's bigger. Thanks.
yes. And so many of our population are probably infected, and we're not even realizing it. We have not been educated. So you've got a few tools. So I hope you're able to use them. Any other comments?
Linda, this is Joan.
Okay.
I'm highly allergic to aspartame.
I remember. Yes.
And it was my understanding they were even thinking of putting it in milk years ago. And then I think it's in some cake mixes. I know one Easter I had some jelly beans and just got really, really sick. And there was no listing on the label. What we figured out, aspartame was in the jelly beans.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just have to muscle test my way through the store.
Yes. And so, what could a little bit of aspartame done to you? Opened you up for a variety of things, possibly related to Lyme's. All of us are in that situation. All of us. So. Okay.
Well, I avoid it like the plague.
And I know you're such a great muscle tester. It helps. All right. Anybody else have a comment?
I have a couple of questions and then an off the wall question. Rebecca here.
Sure.
You said sea salt. How about the Himalayan salt?
Yes, and I kind of jumped on that. I talked one time about 3 different kinds of salt: the Himalayan, the Celtic sea salt, or the real salt. The Redmond real salt are the 3 best known, well-known ones that are better and have the 60 to 80 minerals in them.
Okay.
I do suggest that you muscle test, because I have found out from, teaching 5,000 people in my office to muscle test, that women that are not cycling anymore usually tend to need the Redmond real salt. Women who are having their cycle test for the Himalayan. And you look at that Himalayan, it's pink, so they said that's the iron, that's the mineral showing up in there. I hadn't thought of that, and men a lot of times test for the Celtic. So everybody has a different mineral, composition that they need. So that's why, you should try to figure out the best salt that your body needs.
Okay, I'm a newbie. I don't know what a muscle test is.
Oh, wow. I've got Vienna on here, but we have several people that muscle test. It's also called kinesiology. And you can actually, I don't think you can see me right now, right? Maybe you can you see me?
Yeah.
Oh, you can. Okay, couldn't even see myself on the screen. But you can take your fingers like this and just very simplistically, you need to ask yourself if your body will differentiate a truth from a falsehood. And the easiest way for me to show you is to say, make a ring, make a loop. And I think this is called the ring to ring one. And if you say a true statement and try to pull this ring apart, it will stay strong. If you say a false statement, your body cannot hold it and the rings fall apart. So like if I say my name is Sue, there's no way I can hold this. But as soon as I say my name is Linda, it's as tight as can be. But my name is Sue, and I can't do that. So you can kind of test yourself a little bit that way and see if you can get the feel for that. Then you can take your sea salt, like I just got my phone right here for just a second, but you can hold it up underneath your arm or whatever, touch it in some way. And then you can say, do I need Redmond sea salt? Yes. Do I need Himalayan salt? No, but you've got the samples to kind of test. So you can test all kinds of supplements with that. Now that's just a 2-minute really quickie, but
Okay.
that is kinesiology or muscle testing.
All right. Sorry, I've got 2 more questions.
Sure.
When you talk about water, there's some question about our water quality and the stuff that's in it. I use a Berkey filter, but I'm wanting something more refined, and I'm looking into a distilled water machine. And I wondered if anybody had a lead on a good one that isn't extremely costly, because I'm looking at machines that are like $2,000, and I wondered if anybody had a good lead on that they've been happy with.
We've got several people that could give you some ideas. I am really careful with distilled water because that means all the minerals have been taken out of it. And I really have just told you about how I love minerals. So you would want to make sure that you're putting every single mineral back in that your body needs every day if you use a distilled water. So you've got a lot to think about there. So there are other kinds. I don't know if anybody, wants to make a contact with Rebecca about that, but that is a lot of research done on that. I have different kinds of distillers also at different places in my office. So that's a hard question. And we're hearing more and more today about our water supply being so tainted.
It's
So
very
we're all trying to figure out what to do.
It's very confusing, and you can make an expensive mistake thinking you're protected. So my last question is off the wall, because something has recently come to light about these CV shots and remdesivir. And I wondered if any of your programs are applicable to snake venom.
You are so great, Rebecca. I looked that up this morning and I do not have anything for snake venom on there, but I can add it. And I am kind of working on 100 different new ideas to add to the WAVwatch. And what I would do is probably just release a new TF card. And so when I get it done, you could purchase a new TF card and it'll just be minimal, just my cost. Glad to share that. And it will have something to do with that. I hope.
Would you get on that right away, please?
I hope most of you ladies have heard and gentlemen have heard about the snake venom idea by now. It's just coming out and now several stations are carrying it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would you hurry up and get that out, that card, please? I think you could charge a premium for that, and it would make selling the watch a lot easier.
Well, I asked for any responses last time, any suggestions, and I only got like 5 ideas. So I don't have enough to fill up the 100 yet. I'm trying to make it really a good card,
Well, it doesn't have to have 100. The snake venom card by itself would be worth.
Actually, that's true.
You don't need, look, get the snake venom thing. If it's just one thing, get it.
I don't know how many of you can do a show of hands or, wave at me or something, but how many think that snake venom is interesting or, I don't know how far we can go, but
Oh, please. I've been looking at this in depth. Absolutely, absolutely, without question.
some of you
Just the
may not have
snake
heard
venom
about it,
part.
but it will just blow you to pieces when you see that information. So,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
And
and Virgil, where are some spots that you saw? I saw it on Mike Adams. He had one, but I saw Dr. Is it
I'll send,
artist?
I'll send you some links. It's all over.
Yeah,
And it's
I mean, I was just trying
continuously
to
refining.
announce the links so that people could hear them. I don't need them. I've got several, but Dr. Artist, Mike Adams has
You
it.
can go to beforestnews.com. Anyone can go there and they repost all that stuff. You have to be discriminating with that. But
Okay.
beforestnews.com
I
is a good
think I
place.
saw quite a few hands when everybody's kind of waving about the snake venom being very, very interesting. So we'll be working on it. All
And
right.
I want to say something about the water. I've owned many different water systems, and I'm now back to a $40 zero water system that takes out all the particulates measurable, and then putting back in the minerals through my nutrition or supplements.
Actually, that's what I'm doing too, Virgil. I have a zero water one.
That's it. $40. Screw all those Berkeys and all that stuff. And you can check the efficacy of the filter with a device that measures the particulates that comes with the machine.
Okay.
Am I making sense?
Yeah. Any other suggestions?
On there for making your system alkaline, like, alkaline water, alkaline.
Is it Anne? Are you trying to talk?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Now we can.
Okay, sorry. I was just thinking of alkalinity. Is there anything on there now?
Is there anything what?
For alkalinity, to make my body more alkaline instead of acid?
I'd like to answer that question.
Oh, sure.
I have recently become a proponent of getting the body alkaline and checking my.
So we're not hearing you now. Virgil, something happened.
Okay,
There you are. All right.
baking soda, water, pea sticks, check your acidity 2 or 3 times a day. Manage the acidity not by guessing, but by observation. Frequencies will not do it. I've
No.
worked with that technology for decades. I've not ever seen.
I don't have any for that. So the simplest thing possible sometimes works. That's why I say simplicity, the salt, the vitamin C, the B vitamins, the salt baths, the pH changes possibly with baking soda, those kind of things. Simple, simple, simple. And we'll be able to get those. Are they going to ban? Maybe I shouldn't have said that exactly, but hopefully they're not going to take baking soda off the shelves, So,
Linda,
I
one
mean,
more
okay.
thing for that super simple list is colloidal silver.
Yes.
And I have I've got some to bring to you tomorrow. And so this is silvergen.com. And
Oh,
it's,
lovely.
yeah, just perfect. silvergen.com. And it's effective. It's an element, right?
Mm-hmm.
Against 650 different organisms, including molds and bacteria, virus, fungus, all that good stuff. So just add to your simple list.
Yes.
And it gets that. It was actually part of the sea salt and vitamin C protocol. I'd forgotten what the other element was. It was colloidal silver. So when it gets pushed into the cell, that is helpful. Okay.
And I don't know if all of you are aware of silver, but it's lovely. I mean, the ancient Romans knew about silver killing all of these, different pathogens. Supposedly they put silver bars in the aqueducts, and that's why their water was so clean. and they survive for years. So lots of stories, you know. So we're not inventing anything new. We're just trying to copy what other civilizations already done. Any other
Linda?
comments? Yes.
Hi, this is Vicky Akers, and I do
Okay.
have a question. I'd love for anybody to share information on how they've dealt with shingles. I just realized yesterday that that's what I'm dealing with and would love any suggestions to help with that.
And I think we spoke just a little bit before we started videoing. And basically, I do have 3 different frequencies for herpes zoster, which is shingles on
Yep,
the.
I'm running them right now.
Okay. And I also mentioned silver, which Vian is going to, you know, talk about too, probably, or, you know, say thumbs up on that one. So that's all we know so far. Does anybody else have any ideas on shingles?
I can tell you that from my research, getting all these protocols are enhanced when the body is alkaline.
Okay.
End of story.
So
All
I'm
right.
really curious, this is Julie. And I'm really curious, if you're making the body alkaline, what is that doing to the production of the stomach acid and the digestion that goes through the stomach that's so important for us to get the nutrition we need?
Can I answer my own experience with that?
Yes,
Yeah,
that'd be
you're the
great.
one that's talking about it.
Okay. I went to many doctors, holistic, all those guys. They said you need more hydrochloric acid or you have this and that. So I took all kinds of gallbladder hydrochloric acid supplements, apple cider vinegar. Then I started listening to Dr. Young. He said, just take some baking soda with your meal. And all the belching stopped. So all I can say to you is we're in a new world of understanding, just like with Linda's technology and its application through the watch, with a greater and grander understanding of how the body works and letting go of some of the ideas in the past that are conventional wisdom that are just incorrect. So I'm not saying it's going to work for you, but I'm saying if you go to Dr. Robert Young and start listening to his videos, you can make up your own mind.
Okay. And my answer to that, just a little bit too, to add to it, is that's completely separate than the salt I'm always talking about. And one of the reasons that we need more of the minerals in the salt is because it does balance that pH in your stomach. And so today, we would have many, many people who would not be as allergic as they are if they had salt in their system. Because when the minerals lower the pH balance, our body is able, I mean, and it does different things in different areas of your body, is what I'm saying. It doesn't necessarily mean it's across the board. And so when that pH is lowered where it's supposed to be in the stomach, then our body can digest proteins. And our little kids wouldn't be as allergic to, say, possibly gluten or some of the other allergies that we have. And I've seen that many times with people who I suggested they take higher dosages of minerals through the salt, and their allergies went away. So again, different idea, additional idea. Did somebody else raise their hand or have a comment? Vienna?
I have one more thought on the pH, what the gentleman was saying about the pH strips. I think is, maybe you used a different word, but, and to the question about the stomach acid, what we're talking about alkalizing the body, we're talking about blood and urine as the ways to test that. I mean, you're not going to do a blood sample to test it, but saliva and urine, and the pH of the urine should be lower than that of the mouth, or else your body system is flipped. Pam Christensen taught us about that. And so that's got nothing to do with the stomach.
Right.
So if you have a question about it, maintain your stomach acid. I hadn't heard the thought of baking soda with a meal, but however you feel like you need to do with your stomach acid, you could just take your alkalizer apart from your meal, and then your stomach acid is going to be right there doing its thing, and the rest of your body can be properly alkalized.
Yeah, so different areas of our body have different alkalinity and, that kind of thing. So.
Back to back to water purification. Any thoughts on if you don't have a silver machine that you could put like a silver coin in a reservoir and let it sit there? And also, what about shungite?
I don't know about shungite, but I love quartz for purifying water. That's a very good thing. In fact, I have quartz coasters and I'll set my water on top of the quartz coaster to try to purify it. That's, that's an extra little thing now.
I'd
I don't know
heard,
about the shungite.
I'd heard way back when, before pasteurization, that some people might put a silver quarter in their milk jug to help prevent it from the bad bacteria. So I wondered about purification of water, if you had silver sitting in it long enough, if that would help. The shungite, I've heard that you can put it in and it would help purify your water, but I hear things, I don't know if that's true.
Vienna, I know she knows a lot more about silver than I do. Any comments on that?
Absolutely. Silver will take care of pathogens in your water supply. So that's a fabulous idea to add colloidal silver to water on the, that you're going to be drinking, cooking, all that. I don't know that it would do venom. So just saying it. And I did buy a really cool water bottle at the Gem and Mineral Show. So you can unscrew the bottom and put in whatever kind of minerals you want. It's not in the water, but I totally heard that concept of the milk, silver dollar in the milk. And that was what really convinced me about the colloidal silver. That's what the pioneers did, and their milk didn't spoil, because in the presence of, let me just say this was phenomenal to me. The silver does not attack anything, and that's why things don't become resistant to it. It disables an enzyme that they need to replicate. So if they can't multiply, you're free of it in that sense whenever the life cycle's over. I'm not saying that about Lyme disease that's hiding all over the place, but I gave it to a neighbor with a stomach virus, or anyway, some kind of a flu, and she sorry, I've got a call coming. Let me I took her some colloidal silver before I ran out of town for an event, and said, probably in about 4 hours, you'll notice a difference. And she told me when I got back into town, she said, yeah, it was 4 hours and 7 minutes. And I jumped up and, suddenly felt awesome and better. And that was the life cycle of that particular stomach issue. But that idea of the disabling the enzymes so they can't replicate. So that, to me, that was phenomenal.
Would the colloidal silver be good for the shingles?
Absolutely. And you could put it on topically. You can drink it. It's a bit expensive at the health food store, but if you get your own generator, it becomes, it's.
Yeah, I make my own. So
oh, perfect.
I would be wondering how often I should be taking it.
I would for sure muscle test that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
it
you can
depends
put it on topically. Put it on
yes.
topically. Yeah.
And the other things on WAVwatch that I recommend running for that are nerves and skin ideas.
Okay.
Because those are, those you want to support all you can in that incident.
Thank you.
I haven't studied this yet. The news is so new about the snake idea we're talking about. And I wonder about iodine. I will study that because it does denature proteins and breaks it down of all kinds. So there might be a possibility that iodine would be helpful in that. So I do not know, but we need to maybe all of us be researching, and next week when we come, if you're able to come back next week, we'll have some updates for you.
You need an NAC frequency, N-acetylcysteine, in that new card too.
Okay. Hey, I'll write that one down. I'm not sure I can find it. A couple of them I haven't been able to find them.
Right.
Suggestions, but I'll do my best. All right. I didn't have a lot of feedback about Lyme disease, except for Eileen's great, information. I have had a couple of people that screened for Lyme disease in the in my office, and when they tested the WAVwatch for me, I think they had, 30 to 40 minutes to spend, and we muscle tested and tried to get the ones that we felt were the strongest. And they actually felt something. They could say, oh, I felt it in my, my fingers here. And then 7 minutes later, or 8 minutes later, when we changed to another frequency set, they'd say, oh, now I feel it in my stomach, but I have never had anybody that, except for one person, I do believe, who did tell me that she had a reaction to it. And that would be a Herxheimer's reaction, which tells us that it's doing something, that it's killing off something. And she was a long time Lyme disease sufferer, knew she had Lyme disease, and she did wear it and, did have a reaction. So, but those are the little testimonies that I do have. But just educating people and letting everybody pass the word around that it's a big thing. 90% or more of us have to be carrying Lyme's disease in some way, shape, or fashion in our bodies today. And that started way back in 1975 when they discovered it in Lyme, Connecticut. And how long did it take before it got loose in Lyme, Connecticut? So that could have even been the early 70s. So that means, it's been passed around for 50 some years in our society.
Linda, you are a sister from another mister. And a week or so ago, I asked this question: what would be the frequency that would give me the most bang for my buck to run? And it came up as running Lyme. I said, Lyme, really? Just running Lyme. So here you come with some explanation. Thanks a lot.
You're welcome. And I remember you were testing the pineal gland too, wasn't it?
Yes, that's really critical.
That was another one.
Yeah, for the special frequency. I know we have it in which one?
It's in the weight loss for some reason. I'll see if I can get that one put in a couple more places so it's obvious for people to access that. So
exactly. Yes.
That'd be an idea.
Yes.
All right.
Linda,
Well, I know.
Julie,
Yes.
Can I ask one more question? What is the frequency or frequencies actually doing to the spirochetes or the bacteria or the viruses? Is it actually killing it, or what is the mechanism that's happening from the frequency?
Yes, from what I'm understanding, basically they have measured frequencies for 100 years. So we're talking about Rife and some of the equipment that he used, but I really have never seen the equipment that they use to measure frequencies. That's one of the things I need to learn more about. But those frequencies have been available, and for things like the spirochetes, And so what we're doing with our equipment is actually duplicating that same frequency. So if this, virus is in your body vibrating like this, our WAVwatch or a Rife machine or whatever is sending in the exact same frequency, and they meet. And then they start vibrating, and then they just over vibrate, and all of a sudden they're gone. So what word could you attach to that? Does it kill? Does it break down? Does it over vibrate? Several scenarios like that. So that is called a resonant frequency when you're using the same frequency to make something over vibrate.
So when that happens, does it actually disappear? Because if it does disappear in a sense, then it's not needed to be detoxed through the system.
That's a good question. We still have some residue sometimes. I do not know. I think sometimes you would have some detox situations that need to be done, and other times no. And that's another reason I really recommend the salt, is because salt helps our lymph nodes to open up and detox. So that's why I said I haven't had very many people that have had negative reactions when we kill a virus or a parasite or whatever. So, that's a great point that you just mentioned. There might not be a detox if it just, I do not know. Any other ideas on that? Help me out, somebody. Good comment. I guess you got us all stumped there a little bit.
Well, I'm doing this by experience because I do have tested positive for Lyme, and I am using the Lyme frequencies. And I have noticed tingling up in my head or near the skin surface, but never felt the need to detox after that. However, when I run the parasite, I get symptoms, but I do need to detox after running the parasite frequency. So that's just been my experience.
And are you running the whole Lyme folder?
The entire thing.
Okay,
I think it's like 3 hours and 20 minutes, I believe.
Yeah. And I do have detox and lymphs and detox built into that. So you are actually getting a little bit of detox. So I don't know if that's helpful or not. I have no idea.
Absolutely perfectly, because the differentiation there is I'm thinking detoxing with frequency or having to physically detox the body through other means. And how wonderful that I just put that together, that I am detoxing by frequency.
Yes, I would think so. Yeah. And don't forget, I know repetition, I just said it, but that's why I love the salt, because it opens your lymph nodes and helps them to detox. So,
May I just add something else?
Yes.
I started getting sluggish, and I started to ask, why am I feeling sluggish? I've been doing rebounding for years, and I backed off. The physical process of rebounding, jumping up and down on a trampoline, at whatever level of efficiency, I have found to be extraordinarily revitalizing in terms of moving that lymph and moving that sludge out of the system, or moving it around so that it can move.
Thank you so much for that suggestion. I have had the neuro Lyme that affects the neuro system significantly. And when I rebound, I actually can lose structure. You know, I'll need a chiropractor treatment, or because it's so hard for my muscles and nervous system to hold me in place. Are there other ideas of moving lymph besides a rebounder?
I use a chi machine, which is, but I can't say that it does or doesn't. I just have one. I use one. That is one that waves, lay it down horizontally, and it just rotates the body side to side.
I also
That's very
have
gentle.
that, and it will affect my pelvis also.
Okay.
It's
Oh,
the
wow.
movement, right? It's the rebounding and the movement. It's very difficult for my body to hold in place. So,
I don't have an answer there.
okay,
Would
Julie,
you be able to do body brushing?
I do. Thank you.
Okay.
and Julie, maybe you can relax a little bit on this testimony, but I have a young lady that works for me who is a 4-year non-Hodgkin's lymph node, cancer survivor. And she knows when her lymph nodes are starting to get plugged up now. And before she started to work in my office, her method was to do a handstand, in the corner, and stand on her head and go for a run and do some, all the things that we've been talking about, different exercises and some jumping and rebounding and whatnot. And then when she found the wave, and it would take 2 or 3 days for her to feel her lymph nodes change. And when she found the WAVwatch, she just plays it, and within 30 minutes, she's got results. And I wish I need to have her make a video of that. So possibly the WAVwatch is doing a pretty good job. It would be individualized with everybody, but you could play the lymph node folder also for help in those lymph nodes. She's playing the lymph node folder. She goes to organs and lymph nodes.
Thank you so much.
There's a product that you get on Amazon called Lymph Drainage by Carnivora. And it's like homeopathic drops to move your lymphs. It's on Amazon, it's $40.95. Lymph Drainage by Carnivora.
Great help. That's why we're here together. I love it. All right.
Yeah, excellent ideas. I appreciate it so much.
Yes, and let us know any updates that you might have on Lyme, that we would like to know how you're doing.
It's been fascinating.
One question, Linda. Do you take phone consultations for people? I have people that want to talk to you.
I haven't necessarily structured a phone consultation, but maybe I could start doing that. I don't know.
I would appreciate that, because I'd like to refer people to you. because people will take your time and not spend any money. And I know you're very gracious, but would you let me know? Because I have some people here that would like to take advantage of what you know.
Okay, and try to direct them to this if there's a particular question. I've tried to label what each of the Zoom or webinars is about, so hopefully that will work. All right, I think we've been at it for an hour and a half. Anybody have any more questions or additions? All right, thanks, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for coming on, and feel free to pass this link along to anybody else.
Thank you.
And
Thanks, Linda.
All righty, bye-bye. Thank you for
Bye.
attending.
Thanks, Linda.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Linda.